We are doing a press event today from the Algonquin Anishinaabe First Nations, and we thank them for allowing us to gather in their territories. Today we're gathered here to talk about something that has impacted Canadians from coast to coast to coast. Canada is faced with a housing crisis, and there is no small part. This is no small part, a result of the federal government, the federal Liberal government, walking away from the National Housing Program back in 1993. Soon after, we saw the financialization of the housing market take root. This is when corporations and wealthy investors make big money by putting people, such as tenants that will be speaking later on today, out of their home. They buy up rental housing units and often older buildings, and they rental evict people in those buildings and jack up the rent after. This is what financialization of housing means, and it needs to stop. Today, we're seeing 300 tenants at Manor Village get rental evicted from their corporate landlord. The fallout are the residents who find themselves without a home. Peggy is one such example. She is a fixed income senior, and she's lived in that building for 30 years. And everyday Canadians like Peggy are at the mercy of big corporations and wealthy investors who are fueling the housing crisis. Rich investors should not be allowed to buy up affordable rental units and force existing tenants out of their homes and jack up the rent to unaffordable levels to turn a profit. And that is why the NDP is calling on the government to take immediate action to stop corporate landlords and REITs from treating our housing market like a stock market. New Democrats are calling on the government to stop the financialization of housing by putting in place a moratorium on the acquisition of affordable homes by real estate investment trusts and other corporate landlords. We're also calling on the Liberals to put in place an acquisition fund to allow nonprofits or land trust organizations to purchase rental buildings when they come on the market. We have to do everything we can to stop the loss of affordable rental housing stock. We have to stop the financialization of housing. It is not right to evict people and to turn a profit at their expense. Peggy, who is a tenant at a building here in Ottawa, at Manor Village, and 300 of the tenants have been handed a rental eviction notice. That just happened back a week ago, that they've all been told that now they're going to lose their homes. Peggy, unfortunately, is not able to make it today as she woke up this morning feeling unwell. I am certain that the stresses of her current situation is not doing her health any good. She is a fixed income, low income senior. She's lived in that building for 30 years. You have to ask yourself, what will she do if she loses her home? We already have a homelessness crisis in this country, and the reality is this: the Liberal government cannot build housing fast enough to replace the loss of affordable rental housing stock. As it stands now, for every 1 unit built, we lose 15. That is the reality to which people face. And even during this period, corporate landlords are making a killing, and that is at the expense of the people. Housing is meant to be a place for someone to call home. It is not a commodity, and it should not be treated as such. And that's why it is absolutely essential for the government to put in a moratorium on the acquisition and to put in an acquisition fund, a nonprofit fund, so that nonprofits can go in and buy this housing when they come on the market, so that we can hold on to this affordable housing stock. According to the Attorney General, the Auditor General, my apologies, according to the Auditor General, who's done a report on this, over the tenure of the Liberal government holding office, we have lost more than 180,000 units of affordable housing. That is the reality to which people face. So with that, I'm going to ask my colleague from ACORN, Bader, to come and share with you his fight on this and his work on this, and also present a statement from Peggy, who unfortunately could not make it today. After that, I will invite Daniel Blaikie, the NDP finance critic, to come and take the podium and to say a few words, and then we'll be happy to take questions. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Bader Abu Zahra. Hello, and I thank you for allowing myself and ACORN Canada to speak today. So ACORN is a local and national community organization of low and moderate income people fighting for social justice. For nearly 2 decades, housing has been the membership top priority. In recent years, we have seen the development of financialized landlords that treat housing as a community rather than human right it is. Their sole mission is to make a profit from their shareholders and investors. And how do they do this? By buying low-cost rentals and driving out long-term tenants through aggressive tactics like renovictions and demevictions, and constant above the guideline rent increase called AGI, and neglecting repairs until tenant gets so frustrated they leave. ACORN believes the financialized landlords are the biggest culprits behind our affordable housing crisis. This is why ACORN Canada fully supports a moratorium on the acquisition of properties by financialized landlords. In addition, ACORN Canada is calling for the disclosure of property ownership. Every tenant should have the right to know who their landlord is. Also, we are asking for an end to the tax exemption for real estate investment trust rights who pay $0 in taxes and at corporate and entity level. Now, I'd like to speak on behalf of Peggy, who unfortunately was not able to be with us today. She's became sick. I like to give the real life example of what I have just described. Right now, over 300 tenants in Mano village here in Ottawa are being renovated. One of our Mano village members, Barry Rafter, can't not be here today, but wanted to share her story. Here it is. Hello, my name is Peggy Rafter. I am an ACORN member and have been a resident of Mano village for over 30 years. I came to the neighborhood because I was fleeing an abusive relationship with 2 kids, and it was that I could afford. I was quickly welcomed into extremely tight-knit community that I will still live in today. The neighborhood really embodies the saying that it takes a village to raise a child. People watch over each other's children, and everyone knows each other. There is such a sense of safety here. We never worry about the kids because someone always has an eye on them. Even the older children, they always look at the younger ones. Over the past 30 years, the community has become my life. I have been a community association. I have been baseball coach. There is such a sense of togetherness here. We have been through tornadoes, fires, power shutoffs, all together. So we have welcomed babies and been to funerals. We had neighborhood potlucks and charity fundraisers, and we help dig each other's cars out of the snow. Everyone take care of each other. No one watches from behind a curtain, but we all will come out to help each other. I have raised my kids here. I have my grandchildren here also. Ever since Forum Equities, a Toronto-based investment company, took ownership of the neighborhood in September 2020, I have been worried about how all of this could change. My neighbors and I have been aggressively offered money to leave. For many, they have stopped doing repairs as of April 29th. They have issued mass N13 eviction notices to do major renovations. Why? So they can destroy the community and raise the rent for tenants who can afford to pay more. I pay $1,133 a month, all inclusive for 2-bedroom townhouse. I will never be able to find anything like that in this range again, not to mention the community and family that I will be torn from. If I are forced to leave my home, my rent will go up to $1,800 to $1,900 range. I am on fixed income pensioner. I cannot afford the kind of rent. This will be detrimental to my physical and mental health. I have an autoimmune disease which affects my lungs and knees. I need a safe, affordable home. I need these people. I need this place for my health and my sanity. We know there is affordable housing crisis right now. This is why I joined ACORN and why we want to put a stop on predatory corporate landlords. If you want to support me and other Mano Village tenants, please reach out to ACORN and join our fight. We will have a demonstration on Wednesday, May the 18th at 12:30, starting at Grill and O'Connor. I'd like to thank you very much for having me here.
Well, good morning, and thanks to everyone for being here. Thanks to Bader and to ACORN for joining us today. Thank you to Peggy for being willing to share her story, and thank you to Jenny for your awesome leadership on this file on behalf of New Democrats across the country. We're here today to talk about a problem that I think everyone knows very well, which is the Canadians that are trying to either buy their own home or rent an affordable home, or in the case of Peggy, trying to stay in an affordable home, are all getting kicked in the teeth. And they're getting kicked in the teeth because the market has been set up not so that they can be competing with families in like situations with similar incomes, but so that Canadians that want to find their way into a home are having to compete or take on deep-pocketed corporate investors. And that's what's structurally wrong with the Canadian housing market. There are people out there that'll tell you different things about that. The Liberals so far have only been willing to take action in respect of foreign buyers, but we know they only represent about 5% of the market. Conservatives will tell you it's government spending, it's the Bank of Canada, it's anything that they can say that will cause people to look away from the real problem, which is giant corporate profits that have been made by turning what should be a market that's about people getting their family home into an asset class to make money on. And that's not something that's happened simply by accident. That's something, if you look at the history of real estate investment trusts, what you'll see is they started taking off in 1996, which, as it happens, was right after the Liberals canceled the National Housing Strategy. And they've been gaining steam since then. It doesn't serve Canadians' interest to only look at the last 2 years and what's been happening in the housing market over the last 2 years during extraordinary times. The trend line for Canadians getting pushed out of affordable homes starts much earlier than that, and it spans across Liberal and Conservative governments alike, who have not been doing enough on the supply side, but have also fostered a culture in the tax code that rewards companies for doing exactly what's happening to Peggy, coming in and buying affordable buildings with affordable rents, rent-evicting the tenants, and jacking up the rents. They've done that through the tax code because if you're part of a real estate investment trust, you don't have to pay any corporate tax on your profits. As long as you're paying out the money that comes in to individual investors, they just pay tax as individuals, whereas normally a company would first pay corporate income tax on its profits and then pay its dividends out of what remains. The other way that Liberal and Conservative governments alike have encouraged this broken culture in the housing market has been by not renewing the operating grants that were tied to many affordable buildings, whether they're co-op housing or nonprofit housing across the country. There was federal operating money to make those units affordable, better than affordable, actually rent geared to income, which is the gold standard for affordable housing, ensuring that tenants aren't paying a disproportionate amount of their income on rent. So, because those operating grants were tied to the mortgages, and they were 40 or 50-year mortgages, those mortgages began to expire around the end of the Harper government's term. They said that they would not renew those operating grants. The Liberals ran on a commitment to save them and then didn't do it. What that means is that we have buildings across the country that traditionally have had federal operating money to ensure that they could provide affordable rents to their tenants, that have been told by Conservative and then a Liberal government, we will not renew your funding. And what's that meant is that they either have to jack up the rents themselves or they have to sell their building. And that makes them a plump target for real estate investment trusts that see a building that can no longer sustain itself. They have the cash on hand, so they can come in, they can outbid all of the nonprofit associations with experience in housing that would love to acquire buildings like these and continue on a nonprofit affordable model, but they get beat to the punch by real estate investment trusts that have more money on hand and can bid higher. So this is a problem that has been brewing for a long time. It's one that's coming home to roost. The pandemic obviously made it worse, and we can talk about some of the reasons why that is, but I think politicians and other parties are kidding themselves if they think that it was just government spending during the pandemic that has led to this crisis in the housing market. It has been building up for a long time. It is now acute, and we need to do something to cool off the market and save what we can of these affordable units. We're being told by experts that for every 1 unit of affordable housing that we build in Canada today, we're losing 15. That's not sustainable. And it's not even a drop in the bucket in terms of new supply combating the loss of supply. And real estate investment trusts and other giant corporate landlords are at the root of that problem. We need governments to address that problem if we're actually going to maintain affordable housing for Canadians. So that's why we're here today, to announce some concrete measures. Jenny talked already about having a moratorium on real estate investment trusts and corporate landlords acquiring affordable buildings. We've talked about making a fund available so that those nonprofit experts in housing can actually acquire those buildings and run them the way we need them to be run in order to maintain affordable housing. And I want to add to that list getting rid of the preferential tax treatment for real estate investment trusts that make them an even more attractive investment opportunity and attract more capital into a mechanism that is breaking our housing market. We shouldn't be rewarding investors for doing something that makes it harder for Canadians to afford a home. And yet, that continues. So this is a package of 3 things that we think can help preserve more affordable units, create more affordable units, and stop rewarding big investors that are making money by pushing Canadians out of homes that they can afford to essentially fend for themselves. So thank you very much for taking some time this morning to listen. Puis je vais essayer un peu en français. Je suis pas autant fort en français, mais nous sommes ici aujourd'hui pour nous adresser au problème de la financiarisation de logements. Nous savons que les Canadiens et les Canadiennes ont plus et plus de difficultés en trouvant de logements abordables. Et nous savons que c'est le cas parce que de plus en plus, ils sont en compétition avec des grands investisseurs. Alors, ce n'est pas juste les autres familles qui veulent un logement abordable qui sont la compétition, mais c'est les grands investisseurs. C'est une compétition que mesdames et messieurs, tout le monde ne peut pas gagner. Alors, nous voulons avoir un arrêt sur l'acquisition de logements abordables par des grandes compagnies de propriété. nous voulons voir un nouveau fonds pour les organisations non profit pour prendre contrôle de logements abordables et assurer que les loyers restent abordables pour les Canadiens et les Canadiennes. Et nous voulons aussi voir un arrêt aux cultures de taxes qui donne un traitement préférentiel aux compagnies qui prennent des logements abordables et le transitionnent à des logements de luxe ou au moins plus chers comme loyer. Alors, ce sont les trois grandes choses que nous voulons voir ici aujourd'hui. Et je serais content de prendre des questions avec Jenny et Bader. Merci.
And we'll start with questions in the room. If you have a question online, please use the raise hand function.
Hi, Mr. Blaikie. Good to see you. I do have to ask you about the block motion today, the opposition day motion to take the religiosity out of the Commons prayer. And I ask you this because I recall your father, longtime MP, Dean of the House, and I believe an ordained United Church minister. You're part of the strong United Church tradition in the NDP. So I'm just wondering, first to you and then Ms. Kwan, what do you think of the block motion? Is that something you would support?
Sure. I mean, I think that the faith tradition in the NDP has always been a strongly pluralist one, recognizing both that people have different faiths that inform their politics and many people who have no faith at all that inform their politics. And I think it's important that Parliament be representative of people's different faith traditions, including those who are simply secular. So I think we're in for an interesting debate today, and I know that different legislatures have addressed this question very, very differently. For my part, I think, an opposition day motion with simply 24 hours notice isn't the best way to foster the right dialogue about this. So I'll be interested to kind of hear what comes out of the debate today. I know New Democrats have often felt if we're going to talk about changing the opening ceremony for Parliament, that we ought to have a land acknowledgement as part of that opening ceremony. So there's a number of ideas that I think can be on the table when we talk about the opening ceremony. And I think it's something that merits certainly further discussion, whether we make a provisional change today or not. I think it's something that invites further discussion.
Precision before I get to Ms. Kwan. Is that a yes, you would vote for the motion, or is that a no? I'm not trying to pin you down, but I'm just trying to cut through things.
Yeah, I think that looking at the opening ceremony is a worthwhile thing to do, and that there's more than one way to do what I think the Bloc may be intending, which is to think critically about how we open our parliamentary sitting days and the role that a faith reflection or prayer might play. And there's more than one way to do that. So they've proposed one. They proposed it with very little short notice and not a lot of consultation in advance. I do question personally whether that's the right way to go about it. And I think that if we're going to talk about that opening ceremony, then we need to talk about the other elements like a land acknowledgement that are also very important if we're going to talk about reforming that section of the daily proceedings.
Just ask Ms. Kwan as well. Thank you for that.
I'll just quickly add as well, where I used to be a member of the Legislative Assembly in British Columbia, the practice there was such that different members of the Legislative Assembly would be given the opportunity to do the opening, and people will sort of take a different approach to it. And particularly for New Democrats, it was very important for us to ensure that we recognize Indigenous rights and Indigenous peoples in that history. So I think that, as Daniel indicated, one of the things that we should be looking at if we're going to look at reform is how best to ensure that history is incorporated into these kinds of proceedings. Our caucus has yet to actually deliberate this motion, as it was only just tabled yesterday. So we will have an opportunity to do that. At our caucus meeting, and then we would be able to advise in terms of what our next steps are.
So you're not saying yes or no for you?
Well, at this point in time, what I'm just saying is that the caucus is yet to engage in this discussion, and I want to be respectful of my caucus colleagues as the caucus chair, and so I do not want to preempt a decision for our caucus.
Good morning. This question is also for you, Ms. Kwan, and on another topic. We reported in the Globe and Mail today that Afghans who are military interpreters for the Canadian military, former embassy staff, are being tortured and beaten as they wait to come to Canada by the Taliban. And I'm wondering, what is your reaction to this? And at this point, what should the government be doing?
As I've indicated all along, the fact of the reality is this, that with every single passing day, the risks are heightened for Afghans. And for those who serve this country and their loved ones, it is wrong that the government has left them behind. We are learning through committee and hearing directly from former Afghan interpreters and collaborators that the government has betrayed them, that they have not made good on their promise, that they would bring their loved ones here to Canada. And in fact, yesterday, we learned at committee that immigration has, I think, lost people's files. GAC has made, Global Affairs has made referrals to IRCC with people who's gone through the process and been vetted and identified to be at risk, to be having an enduring relationship here with Canada. And those files somehow is missing. We just learned from GAC that they said they've sent all this information to IRCC. But those family members and the representatives of those family members are asking IRCC what's happening to these files. I have written to the government asking what's happened to these files. And we just learned that IRCC now is asking those family members and representatives to request GAC to resend those referrals. You have to ask the question, did IRCC lose those files? Why do they need to be resent on files and referrals that's been made by Global Affairs? Likewise, yesterday at committee, we learned from the Department of National Defense that they have sent 3,800 referrals to IRCC. Only 900 has been followed up. We don't know what's happened to the others. I have a case sitting on my desk right now where an application has been sent in and referred by the Department of National Defense to immigration in November of last year. And we don't know what's happened to that case. They have not received an invitation from IRCC to make application to come to Canada safely. They don't have a file number, nothing. What on earth is the government doing? When they are engaging in this kind of practice, is it a wonder people's lives are in jeopardy, in further jeopardy? I am, of course, heartsick to learn of the situation. And for the families, I cannot imagine the anxiety and the fear that they must be feeling right now. And I'm so dismayed and I'm angry at the government's failure to make good on their promise. No more delays. Cut the red tape. Bring the families here to safety now.
Thanks very much.
And we'll take a question online. Mary Wolf, you can go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Jenny. I wanted to follow up, if I may, your questions at the committee yesterday about this very subject of Afghan interpreters. As you pointed out in committee, 3,800 have been verified as people with close links to Canada who have helped the Canadian military, but only 900 have been accepted. And you asked what's happened with the other 3,100. You just mentioned that, but I wondered, are you going to be taking any action on this, pursuing it, or writing to the minister? Because in committee there wasn't a clear answer on what has happened to the other 3,100 who have been verified as having bona fide links to Canada. And I wondered if you might comment on that.
I'm absolutely going to follow up on this with the minister. I think we need accountability. We need transparency. We need to know what is going on. It is unacceptable to me that in the Department of National Defense, where they have vetted and verified all those individuals, 3,800 files have been vetted from a security point of view by National Defense. They have been verified to have proven that they have provided and have a enduring relationship with Canada. They served this country, and we need to make sure that they're brought to safety. So I will absolutely be following up with the Minister of Immigration, Sean Fraser, to seek answers, and most importantly, to seek action, not just on the 3,800 files from National Defense, but also from the ones that Global Affairs have referred to the government. It is unacceptable to me for IRCC now to say, can you go back and ask Global Affairs to make the referral again? I mean, what is going on with that department? Have they actually lost those files? Do they not realize people's lives are in jeopardy every minute of the day? And we just learned that people's lives are being threatened right this minute. So enough of this nonsense. The government needs to get their act together and bring these families to safety.
Just as a follow-up, one of the issues that has been raised by relatives of people in Afghanistan is the requirement to get a passport. And they've said that people applying for passports to the Taliban authorities have actually been followed, targeted, persecuted. Do you think that the government should find another way to waive this requirement? I know that it's an issue entering Pakistan, but I'm wondering if you felt, given that some people appear to be in grave danger, whether there should be some sort of relaxation of the rules or something that Canada can do so that the people attempting to flee do not come into direct contact with the Taliban authorities.
There's no question that the government needs to waive and relax those documentation requirements. The reality is this. When you're being hunted down and you're trying to hide from the Taliban, you can't just walk into the office run by the Taliban and say, can you issue travel documents or issue passports for my entire family? The minute you do that, you're putting a red flag right on top of your head to be targeted. There is no question that it puts people at risk if they're required to do those steps. What the NDP has been calling for a very long time now is for the government to waive those documentation requirements and issue a single journey travel document to those individuals. Those single travel journey documents would replace the requirement for a passport. That is what is being done for Ukraine nationals. It can be done for Afghans as well. On the question around biometrics and the requirements of biometrics, the government has two choices. They can either issue the single travel journey documents to those Afghans so that they can get to a third country and then do the biometrics in that third country. Or alternatively, if they're not able to do that, bring the Afghans here to Canada and do the biometrics here on Canadian soil. That also has been done before. So there are no excuses for the government to say that it can't be done. It can be done if they want to get it done.
And this concludes the press conference. C'est ma fin de la conférence de presse. Merci.
Thank you.